Blog Talk Radio.
Hey guys, today we are doing another episode of Star Trek Thursday. I am Matt and I am here along with
John, straight from the Pleasure Planet.
So we are those guys. And if anyone's wondering who those guys are, it's basically a bunch of us that come together. It's kind of like a Borg collective thing going on there. It's funny, I haven't even seen the Borg yet, but I'm just assuming. We're definitely not like the fucking Ferengi, but that's not relevant right now. That might be relevant next week, but that's not relevant right now. What's relevant, John, is we're talking about Justice. It had such a cool name, and I did not expect that level of sexual tension from that name.
You don't normally hear the name and think of weird 80s middle-aged swinger planet.
Yeah, no, Project Justice has taken on a weird new meaning for me.
Exactly.
Just the phrase, I'm just like,
instead of school children beating each other up, it's what we're about to discuss.
Which is, okay, so here's the thing, right? I have a question for you. Before I rant and potentially rave in both a good and positive and negative way, question to you is, what did you think about this episode, both when you first saw it and revisiting it? Because you're an older fan than I am. You didn't see this one on TV back in the day, though, I imagine.
No, and honestly, like if I did, I had no memory of it. This was one that I actually I didn't actually see this one until later. It was one of those things that I had missed it because when I originally watched TNG, it was on reruns on a cable channel. It was a local, I think it was like TV 55. It was like a local public access station. So I was watching reruns and I missed certain episodes.
Too.
And
I have
that
it
was
too.
my
It's
original
really weird.
source.
Yeah, it's really weird. Sorry to interrupt, but like I have TV 55 as well. So it's really weird because it's half like public access in a sense, but also mostly just reruns of stuff from about maybe either 10 to 30 years ago. Although by that point, when you were watching, it was probably 20 years ago. Because I'm assuming you were seeing it in the 2000s.
Yeah, that was the late 90s when I would watch it. And basically that's where I caught TOS the first time too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when I was a teenager and I was first sitting down to it, on my own merits. And I didn't see Justice until later. And my initial impression was like, oh wow, this is a very like Star Trek-y thing with these mostly naked people and this machine god and things like that. But my opinion now and then is that this, you can definitely see we're still trying to kind of do TOS thing. It felt like a warmed over TOS episode in a lot of ways.
I disagree a little bit.
It ticked all the boxes. It had the William Ware Thies or Theiss costumes.
Right. So here's where I disagree. Not that the core concept isn't TOS. Perhaps I'm not going to disagree with you there, especially because while I am familiar with TOS, it's been a very long time. So I'd argue you're more familiar with it than I am. But here's where I disagree. The actual depictions of them like kissing each other and getting all up in each other was something they would not have shown on TOS during during that era, even prime time. They wouldn't have gotten that close to each other.
Yeah, I mean there was still a little bit of making, people would make out and stuff on TOS, but it wasn't quite as I feel like it was a little bit more, not really even explicit, just a little bit more glamorized in this one.
Because this is the way I see it, right? Because when I see TOS, right, of course it was always, people would make out, of course, but it would be like even looking at the difference between the Naked Now versus the Naked Time, where it was like, yeah, you had like Sulu shirtless and you had like, this kind of feeling of like, hey, how's it going and stuff like that. It literally looked like when it was like, oh, God, we're on this ship and everyone's dead and they were all pretty naked. Interesting. Like it was exactly. Like they're doing certain things that I feel like in the 80s, I'm not saying it didn't push some boundaries, but I feel like during TOS, they would have been like, no, we can't fucking put that in. Maybe the novelization, but like we can't. Because the way they were sensual.
It is racier. Yeah, it is racier. Because the thing is, it was more that there was like more implied sex and more sexual innuendo than definitely would have made it onto 1960s television. But here's my whole thing with it, and it's an interesting like kind of core sample of season one, because the thing is you do see a lot of the TOS attitudes though, because you got a lot of that Roddenberry like free love future kind of thing,
Very, very
in
true.
a way. But you know what it is, and I'm about as the most sex positive person as you care to meet. But the thing is that it just, I don't know, it was weird and awkward, and according to Will Wheaton, no less so on the set. But like, because they're like, oh, it's a sexual, you know, and because like think back of that one scene where there was like, you know, they make love at the drop of a hat, any hat, and then almost the next line is Picard saying, "Sounds great for the children," or something like that. Like it was the transition was very weird.
So I gotta be real with you. I found that fucking hilarious. Like literally, it's like he'll go there a boy, he'll come back a man. He'll go there a boy, he'll come back a man. Perfect, wonderful.
And you know,
send the children.
They weren't even like. And then it was just the whole thing was just meme material. Because then Wesley wants to play bass. The teenage girls talk about sex. Wesley's talking about baseball, which I mean, you know, have a field day with that psychoanalyst.
Again, I blame the casting, and I'm sorry, guys, if you've been listening in for a while to Star Trek Thursdays. I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to do it again. They needed to cast a younger person. Like Wesley, I don't remember what the canonical age of Wesley is, but Will Wheaton was not. Yeah, 15. No, any 15-year-old, and I'm talking about even someone who's like, I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and everything, like he would still be like, like a little bit like, do you have cameras in this area of the planet? Like, is God watching? Is God watching? God is always watching, actually. Oh, okay, well then that's a problem. But our God, not your God. Oh, dope. So like
our weird droid God.
That got weirder, but okay, go on. No, but like what I'm trying to get at though, John, is that if you put like a Golly G. Willikers 10-year-old, he's just like, I like Pokemon cards. Let's do some Digimon battles. But like I think back to myself at 15, and look, I'm not saying, you know, buy me a dinner first, okay? But like,
yeah, exactly.
Still, like, you know. But you saw Yar with drinks, and I was, or even you saw Yar with drinks. I was like, fucking get it. And then I saw Yasha, Tasha. I can't believe I keep on the empath.
Yasha.
Why do I always forget her name?
Yasha.
Yeah, I was
Troy.
right. Yeah, I was Troy. So Troy, I see her with a couple as well, and I'm like, you get it too. And it's funny. She's like, I can see all of their minds. I'm like, makes it easier. You get it.
Yeah.
So like I was fine. It was fun. I think it was a fun episode to a certain extent.
I do appreciate the fact, as off-putting in certain parts of it, where I do appreciate the fact that it was heavily implied that Tasha and Troy got some, and also you could even see Troy getting an eyeful of, like I said, you could tell like the ladies were enjoying the view just as much as the guys. It wasn't just a male gaze, you know, also female gaze and any other kind of gay you can think of. But you know, so that was part of it too. Is that, so it looked like everybody was having a good time. It wasn't just Riker and Worf, you know, having, you know, sowing their wild oats and having a good time. Like everybody was, you know, kind of enjoying themselves. But yeah, no, it was weird because they were trying to do they were trying to be like sexually liberated, but in a way that kind of struck me as odd. Like it was
so
like
here's
it
why
didn't
it struck
seem,
me as odd. Here's why, and we both got this at the same time, actually, which is kind of funny. So they're sitting there, right? And it's just like, we are this sexually liberal utopia. Everyone here is sexual, but it's not devious. It's pure as snow. And it's like, interesting. Where are the black people? What? Where are the Hispanic people? I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean. People who have darker skin than yours. I'm not following. They don't really exist in our utopia. That's weird. That's what. Because like when you don't give them like makeup, when you don't give them makeup, because this also harkens back to another episode that we talked about where they didn't give the characters makeup and they gave them outfits that were just stereotypical in all these different directions that were all non-white, and it was just like, I think I see what you guys are trying to do here. I forgot the name of the episode.
It was a Next Gen episode?
Yes. Do you remember that one where they were all African American and they were all like the leader was like
Code
angry
of Honor.
trying to steal?
I was going to actually say that this is in the same kind of lack of self-awareness that made Code of Honor possible. They make it so on this perfect sexual utopia, all the beautiful people are Aryan. They're all blonde hair, blue-eyed people, which, again, lots of checks and balances where someone could have said, hey, if this truly is a sexual paradise where, like, all are welcome and everybody can be themselves, why is everybody white? Let's throw a few different people. You know, like I said, and
only
even in '87, they should have known better.
They should have, but I will say this, and this does save it compared to the other one. This does save it to me. They all kind of turned out to be shitty people.
Yeah.
Like to be fair, like if the main couple was like a mixed couple, i.e., let's say like African American and Asian or African American and Hispanic, I would be upset if they were like, oh, we forgot to tell you the rules. Yes, about you all getting murdered. I would feel weird if they were leading the show. So it's this weird situation where I'm like, it's like a juggling act. It's like, is it bad if all the bad guys are white people, or is it good, not good because
now,
like is it good because they were all bad, or I don't know. Like it's starting it off. That's what I thought.
Obligatory joke about if someone wants to kill Wesley, is it really a crime? is that point in their favor or against? That's completely up to you.
My problem with the killing of Wesley is that it does okay. So like I understand their prime directive, but I feel like it does get to a point where it's just like, all right, Picard, put your dick away whenever you hear the fucking phrase prime directive. Like it's just kind of gotten to the point where it's like, yes, but they broke some type of law with you because they did not inform you of their rules when you got a full breakdown before the episode even began. So
and
the
truth of the matter
them.
Yeah, and the problem is, like I said, I think, I don't know if it was just sloppy writing or if Yar just dropped the ball, because this didn't come up. She said it didn't come up in her initial survey of the planet's laws, which I don't know, like I said, how thorough a scan she did if she wasn't able to come up with the fact that their entire justice system, works that way. That like it literally
because they potentially have no record of it. So in other words, they have no record of any kind of punishment. So arguably, if you're doing a scan of written law, or if you're interrogating them politely, because they're not fucking, going to like advanced interrogation them, like this is the, they're chill. This is the future.
Yeah.
So if they're asking like, hey, like, what do you guys like? If you got, like how do things run here? Oh, they run very well. We all love each other. We all do this and this and this and this and this. Like it is kind of, even though I saw it coming, I saw something like that coming, it is kind of slingshotty to be like, oh, by the way, though, if you like, break a rule, you will get murdered.
Yeah, I feel like that's so distinctive. And I know that, if you're basically just going there for but the thing is they weren't just going there for a vacation. They were actually like depositing colonists there. So, if they were, it would behoove you to find out the local customs, which has to necessarily include their laws, especially if it's something as, distinctive as the punishment for every crime is death, and the zone where, the crimes can be committed moves around at random. Because the whole idea is that you never know where the death zone is going to be, so you don't risk committing any crime.
Yes. Now, I have a major question for you because even though, again, my roots with Star Trek go back, I'm still technically a newbie compared to John. So, John, so they are part of the Federation. Like, the ship is going around, finding new life, finding new places. But this new civilization they found, this Eden, basically, they are not part of the Federation?
They are not. And matter of fact, to tell you the truth, one of the fundamental problems with this episode, and like I said, because this is a prime directive dilemma episode, which are a dime a dozen. But the problem with this one is a very simple one. The Enterprise shouldn't have contacted them in the first place. They don't have warp capability. They didn't realize that the machine they thought that the machine in orbit was God. They've never seen their planet from space before. So, but which also begs the question as to why they're so nonchalant about visitors from other planets when they don't even, like I said, they've never seen their homeworld from space, and so they don't seem surprised that there are people from other planets and other star systems that exist and come visit them. Are they just love numbed, as the author of the Nitpicker's Guide for Next Gen Trekkers once said, and I never forgot it?
So I'm going to go with that, and I'll get back to that in a second. But I want to say something that occurred to me while you were talking. So it seems as if Riker was using his dick as a compass.
Yes, as always.
I say that as Riker walks into a room with the smuggest look on his face. Hey, do you want to play this game? Another time. Literally, he's
like,
using his
Riker,
dick as a compass.
I know you're doing the walk of shame through the temple here, but would you like to play some sexy jacks? And he's like, nah, man,
oh, no.
I'm good. I already got 3
Season 1 Riker does not do walk of shame in here. This is a man who, like, I don't know if, I don't know if Viagra is free in the future or, like, what, but he is doing a strut through this temple.
He's one of those, this is Bob commercials.
Oh my God! Also, I love the conversation with Worf. Honestly, the comedy in this episode was actually pretty good in my opinion. Where it's just like, if I was talking to another man, Worf, that would be considered bragging. Bragging, sir?
Yeah, because he says, human women can't handle my my apparently 2 dicks. But,
well, I assume it's more of the strength. He's like, I would need a Klingon woman, sir, or Klingon female.
Klingon,
like, oh.
This is also our first indication that I think that Klingons like it rough. I think this is the first time that we kind of get to see that, that aspect of it.
Yeah. I don't even like it. They can handle it rough. That's the thing. It's kind of like these literally. Actually, how funny would that be? It's like, oh my God, Wesley broke this crime, and also Worf broke someone's spine. Worf. I mean, I told you first off.
I don't want to smear anyone's name on social media. A cast member and a guest cast member did hook up on the set of this episode.
I mean, this is the episode to do it.
Yeah.
What other episode are you going to do it?
Exactly. What are you going to do it in Code of Honor? Are you going to do it in The Last Outpost?
No, Jesus Christ, no. This is the one. No space jellyfish to ruin anyone's arousal.
Great joy and gratitude.
Oh, Jesus. No, but, okay, so, but you were mentioning, why would they even contact them in the first place, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And I agree 100%, which is sad because I feel like the tension in this episode is what really, and I'm not like making a sexual fun joke here, haha, I'm being serious. The tension in this episode was really good. Putting Wesley's life on the line based off of something that was arbitrary, that like even people who hate Wesley have to acknowledge that is some arbitrary shit that should have been mentioned to the ship at the time. Even if you're like, I hate Wesley and I want him to die, even if you're like in that weird, I consider it a weird camp because it's like, dude, it's not the character's fault, it's the writer's fault. Maybe I'm getting too meta with it, but still, even if you're in that camp, it's like, you really have to fucking tell the kid. But before you're like, also I love the whole, go play with the other kids, but not like that. Not like that.
Yeah, play baseball.
No one had to tell Wesley.
Think about baseball.
No one had to. He literally only thought about baseball. No one has to tell him. That's what's so funny. It's just like, are you worried? I don't know if Earth customs are different. Oh, the boy's fine. How are you doing, Wesley? I like baseball. He's great.
Yeah, it's just like, don't worry, Captain. I won't hook up with anybody while we're on shore leave. He's like, oh, I know you won't, Wesley. I know you won't. But yeah, so the fundamental
could if I wanted to.
Sure, buddy. Oh, me and this girl are just role playing, yeah, but not in a sexual way. Yes, I know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the thing is, like, they should never have contacted these people. So there was just speaking to them breaks the Prime Directive, and then exactly what happened is the reason the Prime Directive exists is because, oh no, our presence here has led to like a theological crisis because these people just saw what they call God in orbit.
Also, okay, so I will say something bad about Wesley. Even though, like, okay, they should have at least given him the line, initially, I'm sorry about the flowers. He only said he was sorry when it turned out capital punishment was the end result. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Because he falls into the flowers, and he's like, don't worry, I'm fine. And it's like, all right, dude, even if they weren't in the zone and you weren't going to get killed, your first thing should be like, Oh, guys, I'm really sorry about this. Do you like want me to fix the enclosure or like what? Like we're guests here. I apologize. His first thing was just like,
Oh no, I'm fine.
I'm don't worry. And then like these two guys come over and it's just like, I do not like this at all. And he's like, what? I said I'm fine. And it's like they literally yelled at you while you were running. Maybe he didn't hear it, but they yelled like, no, the flowers. You're not supposed to. Again, maybe he didn't hear it. He was really far away. But it's just kind of funny that his response, if he did hear that, was, no, I'm good. I mean, fuck these flowers. Actually, I got to take a piss. Guys, can you all turn around?
Yeah, screw your flowers.
Yeah. So,
but it was
what I was confused about, though, can I say something I'm confused about? I love that they were like, oh my goodness, you admitted to this crime. Like, wait, could Wesley have just been like, I didn't do it? And the kids were like, we didn't see him do it. And they'd be like, shit.
It wasn't me.
Right.
It was the blonde. It was the blonde girl.
No, because the other guy was like, well, because the other guy was like, I threw the ball. That could be anybody. The other guy was like, I threw the ball. And so literally they could have just been like, it was someone. They all could have just said it didn't happen. That was confusing to me because literally he's like, you admit it? And I'm like, wait, so is he not supposed to admit it?
Yeah, because well, you know what it is. Yeah, they are guests on the planet, and he probably didn't think anything of it. It was just like, oh well, I didn't think I was going to be sentenced to death for stepping on the flowers. But yeah,
well, no,
and the whole idea
I'm not blaming. I'm not blaming Wesley. I'm blaming the two dudes who are the mediators who are asking, and they're shocked that he admitted. Like, wait, do people just normally be like, I didn't do it? And then they ask, did they do it? And the other people go, if they care about them, no, they didn't. Well, I guess you didn't do it. Like, wait, what?
And they do,
like,
they do their little lifguard run with their perfect '80s hair.
I love how they all
and Hasselhoff 2 are on the scene.
How funny is it? You look at Riker, and compared to all of them, the woman who was like with him, and she's like, "Oh, can you not run? Don't worry, I'll still fuck fat guys. But I'm just wondering, you can't run, right?" And he's like, "Motherfucker, I can
run, baby." But the thing is, yeah, it's a Prime Direct. It's probably it's the first of many episodes where they do tackle the Prime Directive, and they, you know, in this case, like I said, they would have to. It's all about following your own rules, even when it's inconvenient, or even when it. But then he realizes that, yeah, basically what it boils down to is, yeah, you know what? It's their local law, and we have to respect their customs. But given that it's a stupid ass custom, I've elected to ignore it.
Yeah, but I want to get back to that. I'm sorry, I hate myself. As I was walking into, because I'm pacing as we do this, and the episode is on in the background on Netflix as I'm pacing. So I walk into Riker trying to contact the Enterprise, and he obviously can't. The communications are blocked by God. You know, typical fucking Tuesday. So when he's trying to talk up, and I have subtitles on, so I saw them before saying like, we have an admission, we have witnesses, and they had like some other third thing. So I see Riker looking up, and all I can think of is one of these things are fact, and the other is fiction.
We fooled you that time. That's a good one.
Gotcha.
All right, I'll get that. That was pretty good. I didn't think of that one.
Nope. I walk in and I see his face looking up, and it just hit me. It just clicked. I'm like, oh no, one of these is fact, and the other is fiction.
Nope, not this time.
Star Trek.
We fooled you. Have you ever spent the night in the haunted house? Have you ever been sentenced to death on a pleasure planet?
Please stop. You're just quoting a video collecting all these clips now. That's all you're doing. Anyway, but here's the thing. So it is sad again that the entire episode falls apart. But I do like that. I do like that they were looked at as potentially more compassionate to save another person, in this case Wesley, rather than follow that simple rule, because if they did, then they truly would not be any different than this race of people on this planet. So in a way, I actually did enjoy them breaking that directive. And again, it also makes more sense now you think about the fact that they're not even part of the Federation, so they really didn't break a directive. Or they technically did just by interacting, but not by pulling out.
The Prime Directive still applies. In fact, the Prime Directive would only really apply to non-Federation. You know, not because the idea is that it applies to non-war. And the thing is, there's been a little bit of waffling and confusion as to what the Prime Directive exactly is. One of the TOS episodes actually lays it out. But generally speaking, it's no contact with warp. You know, with pre-warp civilizations, and if you do, you can't do anything that interferes with the natural development of their culture.
Yes. but what I mean is that them interfering just by going, hey guys, let's fuck, that's breaking the directive, but them pulling Wesley out of there I mean, you could argue it was, if you will, but I would argue it's not. Compared to their initial fuck up.
And they had already, like I said, the Prime Directive kind of goes out the window because they're already there and they're already aware of them. So the directive is already broken. It kind of almost renders renders the whole thing about whether or not to rescue Wesley from them. It renders it moot because you're already there. You've already broken the rule, so it almost seems silly to worry about it now.
Do you think that destroys the episode? Because for me, without thinking of that, the entire episode actually felt like one of the best this season thus far. So do you think with that in mind, that now ruins the episode? I'm being serious. It's fine if it does.
I don't think it completely ruins the episode. I think like you had said, there's some good points are made, like, when has justice ever been as simple as a rule book? And it does that thing that TNG, especially early TNG, tends to do sometimes, where it kind of brings up a good question or an interesting dilemma and doesn't really do a whole lot with it. Like it'll scratch the surface a little bit and maybe drop a few, choice, profound sounding sound bites, but it doesn't really it gets its hands a little dirty, but it doesn't go too deep.
That's true, and that's why we talked about this last episode. In the grand scheme of things, this probably will not be a good episode, but when we compare it to everything in TNG that I've seen so far and you've seen overall, this is one of the better runs. This is a different standard than comparing it to the entire series.
At least this one had a bit more of a clear point. Like there was more, like it was clear what they were trying to do. It was the first, I would say, like quote unquote issue show that it did, because in this case the issue that's tackling is capital punishment, and because it's a hot button topic, particularly then, but really as much as ever. It's the fact that it was taking it on and trying to do kind of what TOS did with a lot of issues of its day, and sort of put it into perspective. The problem is, it's like the reason that TOS succeeded in a lot of its social issues episodes is because they were like very simplistic and silly episodes that pointed out how simplistic and silly the concept was. Like there was that one episode of TOS that dealt with racism, where it was a race where one half, for some of them, one half of their face was black, the other was white, and then with the others it was reversed. And they hated each other just on that basis. So it worked because it showed how absurd the concept is. TNG and later Star Trek in a lot of cases would try to tackle more complex issues and try to tackle them complexly, if it makes any sense. Like they stepped in the ring like they really wanted to really dig deep and go 12 rounds of this issue, and then it just didn't. It kind of paid lip service to a few ideas and then just sort of petered out.
In this case, well, I can see it doing that, and I think your point is fair. What I think they did do that certain episodes so far haven't and got wrong is that they didn't really have high enough stakes. To be fair, last episode did have the captain's life on the line, or when they tried to have high stakes, like with the Ferengi, they also made the mistake of introducing the Ferengi. So it's a double-edged sword. Like, we're going to introduce the Ferengi, and they're going to be evil atrocious and want to kill you, and then they acted the way they did, and they were who they were, and then you kind of sit back and you're like, this isn't high stakes. This might actually be the worst one thus far. So I have no problem. You know what it is, too? I have no problem with the series trying to get cerebral and trying to take on these issues. What needs to happen, though, is it needs to have a bit more oomph, either in the issue side or at the very least in the action side. Because a lot of the times what I notice the problems are the execution of certain parts of either the cerebralness or just trying to, like, they'll take one issue and they'll focus on it for a long period of time. Like, let's say it might be an issue that's a big one, but it's only surrounding one character. What this episode did very well is it jumped between multiple characters' perspectives on the issue, and it could have been a terrible episode, and not because it's Wesley, but it could have been terrible if it introduced these issues but only focused on Wesley. Now, I think they focused on him a bit too less. Like, they should have focused on him a bit more, to be fair. But it could have definitely floundered if it only followed one character for most of it. But I think this show thrives when it doesn't do that.
Yeah, because it's an ensemble cast, that is one of its strengths, as opposed to TOS, which is basically the power trio, and then basically supporting characters. But yeah, it would have been nice to see a little bit more from Wesley's side of things, just because he basically became a MacGuffin.
It's his life.
He became a plot device. Like he's the princess we have to save, basically. So, and yeah, it was that end of it was interesting. Like you had said, that it kind of it took it on, and it kind of started to address it, but it knew that it only had an hour of science fiction television in which to tackle this very controversial issue. So then the question is like, either go all the way or don't go at all. Like, kind of pick, don't
That's
tackle
true.
the
I
issue
mean,
if you're not going to tackle the issue.
Yeah, I just think that it tackled it in a way, I don't want to say better than TOS could, but just doing things that, well, again, like I said earlier, were still controversial, but in certain cases just straight up could not have been done with TOS. And that's not just about the sexual liberation, but it's also about talking about the death penalty as well, which it's interesting because I would think that, yeah, even at the time, and again, even to this day, there are some people who swear by the death penalty. And also, and I'm going to bring some real world stuff into this, sorry guys, the death penalty is not swift. It sounds like it's swift, but interestingly enough, it actually does take long periods of time to kill these people, and it does not always guarantee success, which means that their death is either prolonged or sometimes a failure, which is odd to say.
We use the same system to execute people now, at least in New York. I know it depends on the country. Although actually, no, New York does New York have a death penalty anymore?
No.
No.
They've changed the death penalty because it was under the impression that the chair was obviously horrifying because you could smell people's hair burning and shit like that. So they changed it to an injection, funnily enough, just like this one. Yes, just like this one, but the difference is
that we use.
But the difference is that it's sci-fi. So it's funny. The point actually isn't 100% the same, because in their world, it's painless. Now you frightened the boy, and he's going to die anyway. So how dare you? It was kind of funny. It's the same way the Ferengi will be like, "Ooh, she's clothed at all," and shit like that.
Oh.
But but when the female claw. So, but looking at this though, comparing it to the real world, funnily enough, in a sick way, in a sad way, it isn't instant. It takes, again, hours. So it sounds like it's something simple, but it takes hours, and we don't always have the right person, even if assuming that it's okay if we have the right person 100% of the time. So in this case, it takes that, and like you said, it makes it absurd, because literally it's like he stepped on some fucking flowers. Yeah, well, what are we going to do? Let people rape?
It doesn't seem like there's really any kind of due process either.
No. Like, literally, it's people monitor the zones. You don't know when they're monitored, so you don't do anything wrong. It's funny. They think that they have evolved because they aren't the way they used to be, which it sounds on its surface like, it used to be like humanity and it was terrible. But when you say, like, we've evolved because we have the death penalty now, so no one wants to do things that are wrong, and it's like, yes, but when you extend it to everything, of course, we have a situation where we now have a boy who has literally stepped on flowers. It's funny. The whole
idea is just that said, it's worth, sure, once in a while somebody gets executed for some petty crime, but or some very minor transgression, but hey, it's a small price to pay, for if somebody gets shot for littering once in a while, it's a small price to pay for our society being like perfectly lawful and being almost without crime.
Yeah, and again, that's an interesting debate that, like we've been saying, they tried to get into, but it's just so funny that it came up out of nowhere. Like, it started off with like, look at these hippies, liking the sex, and then it turns into, by the way, I can't believe that's what I loved, how immediately it went from 0 to 100, how shit hit the fan so quick. It was just by the way, did we mention that our laws state that if someone fucks up, they're going to get murdered? You did not state that.
And they did mention that in the when they were introducing the Edo, the species. They said that they're very like progressive in some ways, and then almost puritanical in others. And then it turns out that the puritanical in others is that they have a very harsh penal system.
Yes, that's funny. That was a good one, John.
Pun intended if you want, not intended if you don't
Fully
want.
intended. Yes. Oh, and what I do enjoy too, because at first I thought it was going to get a bit creepy, but they actually legitimately were like, "Hey, no, if you don't want it, like we're good."
Yeah,
like I thought that was
going to
get weird.
Nobody does anything here that they're not comfortable with, unless you want to get executed. If you're not comfortable with that, too bad.
That's so funny. Just like there's like a lawyer for Wesley. Just say this. Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Is it? Just say this. I do not feel comfortable being executed. Damn it, they got us.
Honestly,
also,
like being executed is a hard limit for me.
Also, if the footprint does not fit, you must acquit. Got him. No, but so I was happy that they didn't go into some weird territory with that. I was under the impression, so I was live texting you all of my different predictions, because my first prediction was when it was like, oh, we don't do anything to make people feel uncomfortable. I was like, someone's going to say something to Wesley, and Wesley's going to be like, hey, come on, stop that, and be loud. And they're going to be like, whoa, we don't have anger here, like that one episode of Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they were going to go in that direction.
You're harsh and my mellow, man.
Or when they were, when he was like, oh, let's just go get a branch from a tree. I was like, they don't do that here. So if you deface the tree, I bet you it's going to be an issue. And then my third one was when I loved your reaction to this, when I said, oh, God, no, he's going to be hungry. He's going to see an apple on a tree. This is Eden. He's going to fucking eat the apple. They're going to be like, no.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's not. They're not going to be quite that on the nose with it. Close, but not quite.
So, yeah, I don't know. I just thought that if you're in Eden, they were going to do some shit like that. And it was going to – because I saw a summary that said, damn it, Wesley did some dumb shit. Or Wesley broke a dumb rule. And that's, what happened. So I was like, oh. So I was thinking, like, what is the dumb rule going to be? And it was, I stepped on the flowers. He admits to it. The boy must be motivated.
Wesley is sentenced to death after breaking the public urination laws in the next exciting episode of Star Trek: Next Generation.
At least that makes sense. The boy needs to use the bathroom. Yeah. They literally showed no public bathrooms.
Prime directive for
I don't know where
on the grass.
Oh my God, the prime directive. Right, the Edo. You know why I keep on forgetting their names and I keep thinking of it as a Garden of Eden? I mean, they mentioned it, the references a few times, but because every time I think of the Edo period of Japan, so I'm like, it can't possibly be Edo.
Is somebody going to throw coins? Is it going to be? What was it? Heiji Zenigata, I think.
I don't know. What I do know, John, is that Beverly. What? What about the Edo period?
I was going to say the Edo period probably is one of the most pop culture laden, or most frequently referenced period in Japanese history, according to the movies and samurai movies and detective movies and things like that.
Oh no, yeah. Usually it's the Edo period. Yeah, definitely. But what I want to say about Beverly, I don't know if they didn't have a lot of time this episode, but for some reason her actress was a bit off when she usually is not. So I'm wondering if film constraints screwed that over. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, she definitely, there was something, I mean, Beverly, season 1 Crusher is kind of a mixed bag. It seemed like she was trying to get a handle on the character, because sometimes for certain lines in certain episodes, she has almost like a British accent. And that doesn't really come through in later seasons. But yeah, she's like, I won't let them execute my child, Jean-Luc. Like, really, yeah. So I don't know if she was just having trouble with the material, or I think she was trying out different takes on the character, and she just wasn't there yet. She hadn't really settled on how she wanted Crusher to be.
It's just weird because, I just feel like there wasn't really much range in this episode, but there usually is. That's why I'm saying I don't know if there were, time constraints with filming, because usually I feel like she's on point with her relationship with Wesley, or bad relationship, depending on the episode. And in this one, it kind of felt like she was going through the motions of, save my boy?
Yeah, what I think what she was trying to communicate was is that she was trying to maintain her professional demeanor as a Starfleet officer, whereas internally she was completely freaking out because this planet of 80 swingers was going to execute her son. So she was trying to, like, I definitely did get a sense of her trying to keep it together with varying degrees of success, because we heard her that she kind of understandably snapped at Data.
Yeah, I just think that's okay. So I think that, and maybe this is just me, and maybe it is just me. I feel like during a moment like this, it would be awful. I mean, maybe it would be in character with this version of Picard in this episode, but it would be awful if Picard was like, "Wow, you just yelled at me? You know what? You're off the ship forever." I would say you and your boy, but he's gonna die. So, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like she can. Like, there are these episodes where, I mean, even looking at the last one that we talked about, where it's like, I think it would be best if you were relieved of your command. Is this a mutiny? No, I'm genuinely asking. It's kind of hard to hear you. Like, it's just this idea where certain episodes seems like she's this badass who will like give you a right hook, and then other ones it's like this weird in between where I understand again, her, like you just mentioned, her trying to maintain her professional and her personal life, but it's her boy. Like, I'm not saying I'm not saying she picks up a phaser or anything. I'm just saying that it's weird that it was this kind of subduedness with Picard. Now, I am happy, though, that we can see more from Picard and have him go, hey, look, I actually do understand. I'm scared, too. Although I have to admit, it is very hard to see anything, like any of it from him.
Yeah, because he's the captain. He has to keep everything. He has to maintain a certain level of detachment. Although I'm sure, and that I will say, like I said, I know I've been strafing this episode pretty much since the beginning. There is probably greater emotional honesty in this episode than we've really seen much of before. Like I said, where Picard says, "Oh yeah, I'm scared shitless. I'm totally scared for Wesley." And of course, like I said, he already has, from Picard's angle, he's already sent this kid's father and this woman's husband to his death. He ordered Jack Crusher to his death. So now there's the guilt of not only did I send the dad to die, did the dad die on my watch, but also now I know his kid's going to get executed. So this is a loaded episode for Picard in a lot of ways, and his relationship with Dr. Crusher, which at this point, like I said, they teased us a little more with it early on.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe I sound like a heathen for saying this, and I know that I know that in general, you don't have to beat everyone over the head with every detail at every time. But on a weekly show where we're assuming at this point they aired this for, like a month and a half. I mean, I know things were different back then. Less media, no internet. You kind of just focused on the one show. Other shows as well, but like you had your life, and then you came home, you watched TV. But I don't know if they did air them all in order and it was like a month and a half, still I do feel like that's something that's good to remind the viewers every now and again, because I legitimately forgot that. And I know it's been a while for us personally since we're doing these. We try these on a weekly basis, but sometimes that doesn't happen. But you had to remind me, like, right, yes, he believes that he had killed his dad, basically, so it's the guilt of that. Because it's hard to tell, because usually he's very hard on the boy. Now, you could say that he's hard on him like he might think a father should be, but sometimes, as we joke around about it, it does feel like it's kind of like, oh, Wesley, whatever, man. Step on the flowers, fuck it. Like, it's just...
Yeah, so it's an emotionally charged sort of situation, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I like the fact that it was a little more down-to-earth and human. We weren't dealing with, all love and respect to space jellyfish and snake men fighting werewolves and mysterious travelers, but like it was a little more nitty gritty with the character drama, which is a good trick, because I know early on one of Roddenberry's rules, as I call them, was there really shouldn't be any drama or any conflict between the crew members, between the characters, which that's like 75% of the drama right there. He believed that all the drama should come from external sources. It should come from the aliens of the week and the bad guys, but the crew gets along completely impeccably. What fun is that? That's part of what made DS9 such a great series.
I don't have a problem if there's less conflict. It's just that when you mentioned that it's the type of conflicts where I like that, I guess because they were humanoid, this was a very human conflict. And because it was talking about something that, is a current event, if you will, it actually is a more human personal conflict rather than space jellyfish or the Ferengi. Even though the Ferengi's motivations are quite human, still the Ferengi. So Picard turning into a space version of Palpatine, not really human. In this case, though, I felt I just preferred the antagonists. So, and also I enjoy that they don't believe that they are antagonists, and they were even willing to be like, I mean, if you take them from us, we're not going to kill you over it.
Yeah, they said that you could take them from us, and we wouldn't be able to stop you. And then, so the problem is not that they're physically unable to, and that I will props to that. That did make it juicier. It wasn't like, oh, we could beam Wesley up, but they've got him in some kind of force field and they won't let him out. It's like they could easily, the episode could have been over at any time. They could have just beamed Wesley up and left orbit, and the Ito wouldn't have been able to stop them. But the real conflict was the fact that no, it's not, unfortunately, not that simple. Even though physically, the issue is not that they can't physically retrieve Wesley, but that they have this power and they can't use it.
Yes. And I think that was interesting. Is again, it is interesting. It becomes an issue when we think about the Prime Directive and how it's normally used. Also, just early on, and I know we didn't focus on it as much. We mostly joked about it, but from an honest perspective, I do like how everything was sexually charged. Yes, in a comical way, but it was never a judging way, in my opinion. And I mean that both from the crew on the ship and also just from God, from the Edos, the Edos. I like that everyone was kind of on the same page. Like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, there was a little bit of sensationalism of the the sensual aspect of their culture, but yeah, it was actually treated as a positive. They were like, oh wow, we can't wait to go to this sexy pleasure planet, things like that. So I would definitely say it was a sex positive episode. And ultimately, the sexiness also didn't really end up being super important, except to just set up the idea that it's this virtual gears. Paradise, except for that one detail.
Yeah, it was a sexual red herring. But there is one thing I want to mention, because we can't stop this without mentioning this. It's actually a bad thing. So, like, even though it is sex positive, I got sex positive representation on television, especially 30 years ago now. The one issue, though, is, and looking at this just from a real-world perspective, because that's what we know. We live in the real world. We don't live in Star Trek. They kind of treated the planet like sex tourists, and that's weird.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
Weird.
Absolutely.
So,
we haven't even introduced Risa yet, and already that's kind of the case.
I totally get that reference. Am I right? So yeah, that's one thing. They treat it like it's sex tourism. Although when you told me about their laws, because you didn't tell me about how sexually charged the episode was, but you told me like, yeah, their laws are extremely strict or something. I forgot which one of us. I think you mentioned something like, yeah, he broke a rule that was like extremely harsh. And without knowing anything about the sex in the episode, I was like, oh, so it's Space Singapore, and you died.
I did, because honestly, for some people, let's just say some people would appreciate if the Ito had a caning station, let's just say, and you didn't even have to break any laws. Look, if that was the punishment, there are certain people that would be stepping all over all the flowers.
I love those memes online
gardens.
where people. There's just memes online. People are infuriated. How do I punish these people? When they how do I? But seriously though, yeah, so that's what I thought initially, and then like seeing the episode, I'm like, this is not Space Singapore. This is not. This is like some 1980s. It's kind of funny. This is very much like a 1980s novel or a 1960s novel, like sci-fi novel.
Like a sci-fi novel. Absolutely.
Very, and it's not even like, I'm not talking about like the plot, just the actual environment with their clothes and everything, like the setting, their clothes. It's just kind of funny how it's just like, wow, this is really, yeah.
The costumes were actually, and I'm going to mispronounce the gentleman's last name, but he was a big part of Star Trek, was William Ware Theiss, I believe, or Thies. and he was made famous by the really sexy costumes in TOS, like the togas and the like the really like the barely like the vaporware clothing and stuff like that a lot of the actresses wore. So he was in rare form in this episode too, and but also, like you said, the sort of the setting looked like something off of the cover of a like a 1980s sci-fi novel. It was actually, I think it was the Huntington Library in California. But it looked appropriately
I want to
stagey.
ask you a question. No, it does, and I love the setting because it makes sense when you say that, because I feel like the people will be running around in California in the 80s, everyone will be like, fucking California. Like, it just doesn't seem off or weird, because it didn't look like it was on a soundstage. I was like, this is the best soundstage ever. What I found funny, though, is just initially looking at some people's reactions, of course, Worf being like, nice planet. But when we had Riker, like, oh, we met them before, and she hugs him, I'm like, met is not in quotation marks on the subtitles, but I think it should be. It was just kind of funny, where it's just like, oh, we've met before. And then when it comes to Troi and to Yar, I don't know how they're reacting to it. Later, it seems like they're down, but I don't know how they're reacting to it in the moment. Where I feel like Troi is just kind of like, I don't know if she's like iffy about the hug or not, and then Yar is like, nah, I'm good. Like, I thought they were gonna get into this weird plot line of like the planet secretes this hormone, and we got to get off this planet or something.
No, the everybody gets horny episodes. There are other ones throughout the series, but yeah. So
don't worry, the horny is present.
I said Yar. I said, it was nice to see Yar, especially because past episodes have kind of given us a little bit of troubling backstory about Yar's, relationship with sexuality growing up, which again, can create some potential, unfortunate implications. But also, we don't really know it yet. But Troy's culture is again very sexually honest. Like, maybe not to the degree of these people, but to a Betazoid, sexy stuff isn't really. They're telepaths, so they can sense your dirty thoughts anyway.
That's funny. Yeah, I didn't know that because obviously we're not there yet. And again, just her hug, I didn't know if it was like if it was just like, oh, I don't hug often, or I don't know if she was also frustrated with Riker getting those kind of hugs from people, because there's still something going on there between them that hasn't really been addressed for a bit. Which this would be the perfect episode to do that, sort of, but then, Wesley.
It could just be that she's not as much of a hugger, despite being a telepath and a counselor, maybe, just not her style. Or maybe she's just not used to getting hugged so quickly on an away mission.
Yeah, right. Usually that's not the case. Yeah, also I love the effects on the transparent ship, and even though God was a bubble, so it might seem funny and silly, still I enjoy the implication that it's like, no, I am a being that of light, essentially, or a being of pure energy that could actually destroy all of you. Hell, I stopped you guys from beaming up board, and I'm like, oh shit, that's actually great.
And
they weren't.
That was the thing too, is that it wasn't just the threat wasn't just from because the Edo themselves weren't really much of a imposing physical threat, because like they had said, you could basically just take Wesley from us, but also they didn't know how the God was going to react to removing Wesley. So like I said, there was always that threat that thing could destroy the ship if they tried to interfere.
Yeah. So this is definitely, even though they tried to say Eden over and over and over, this is definitely more of like a Rome. Literally, of course, they said the phrase "when in Rome" as a joke, but it's kind of
when
more of like a Roman Greek thing where it's just like everybody's with everybody, because it's that point in human evolution. Because like because you think of it as Eden, but then when you hear about their backstory, you're like, no, Eden was always paradise. So this is them thinking this is the most paradise they can do at this point. Maybe in about 100 years, we'll have the Federation contacting them and saying like, hey, you seem good now.
It's like, yeah, have you come along on death penalty reform?
Exactly. So yeah, as we're kind of wrapping this one up, again, it's weird for me to say this one might be the best, because again, when mentioning the Prime Directive, it breaks down.
And definitely it's not the only episode of Star Trek that's predicated on a plot hole. Basically, that if there's one if you don't suspend your disbelief for this one aspect of it, the rest of it kind of falls apart. So it's not the only one guilty of that. And I think with a lot of things, you kind of got to take it holistically. It's just overall, how does it handle everything?
And I think it handled it well. Again, we've mentioned issues, but those issues have been a problem throughout this season already. So again, considering with the issues this season, again, only on this season's scale, I think this might be the best one yet.
Yeah, it's definitely. You're definitely seeing. Yeah. You're seeing an improvement each time, though. We're building toward genuinely good television.
Yeah, and honestly, I wish this one had started earlier, because I know I sound like a broken record yet again, but the show is just so fucking lucky that it was built on the name of Star Trek. Because I do not believe that if Star Trek was not involved and this was just a random ship in space and there wasn't a cameo from Bones, it's just a random ship in space, even with Q being great and all, I still think that by this point people would have tuned out, even with these episodes getting better and better. Because the first few were just not. I mean, I like the two-parter, but again, after that, we're just not.
Yeah, and the thing is, you could still see, especially looking back at it in hindsight, the fact that we've seen, the series has been out and Star Trek has continued well past that point. You can still see the seeds of greatness that would come from there. There were still some noteworthy things, some great performances. Because the thing is, even with season one, and even with some of the uneven characterization and uneven portrayal of the characters, you could definitely show, especially Patrick Stewart, just taking that like cheesy mid-'80s sci-fi and just going to town with it, just doing it up like a, because especially like Patrick Stewart was big about delivering the lines with such conviction that you almost forget how silly the dialogue he's saying is, like or like things are only impossible until they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I get you. I just think that he's really good at it. Like them scouting for someone who was really, really big in theater, I think was a plus. So whoever made that decision, kudos to them, because you needed someone like that to take command under a show like this, especially with, like you said, with some of the sillier plot elements and things like that. But the reason why I talk about, I mean, obviously now we know with hindsight, of course, hindsight's 20/20, but at the time, with this coming out at the time, if there was no Star Trek connection, I don't think this would have done as well.
Yeah, it's hard to
That's
say.
That's what I mean.
Signs would point to no. Just taken for what it is.
Yeah,
they might
that's
not
what I
have,
mean.
might not have done as well.
I mean, like in a vacuum where this was called like,
space
travels. Yeah, space travels. In a vacuum. I think that maybe it would have gotten like a cult following years down the line, but I think that initially it would have been one of those, we canceled the show, and then years later we put it all out on DVD with the last few episodes of the season that we had commissioned or some shit like that. Because again, it's now getting better, but it's hard to give it that time when it wasn't that good starting off. Again, assuming it's in a vacuum, no attachment to Star Trek at all. So it's only going to get better from here. Well, maybe a few others in season one will be some decline. But still, in general, it's only going to get better from here. It's just, it took a bit. Took some time.
And everything does. Everything does. Most shows tend not to find their footing until a little bit later. And so I would feel, say, for the first season of most shows, you can kind of give them a pass with that in mind.
True. It's just that I think this, because it's Star Trek, it needs to be better. Maybe that's also, I'm just having it on a different scaling system, I guess, because it is Star Trek. But question, John,
and it does
before
a
we
big
wrap
shoes
this one
to
up.
fill.
Big shoes to fill, definitely. Something to talk about before we wrap this one up. So do you remember if there are any differences with the script? Because I know you have the near shooting script on that CD you got years ago. Any differences that really shot out, or no?
Not really this time. Yeah, I don't
fun
really.
Trivia?
Nothing quite comes to mind that was of any interest. I think it basically aired more or less as the shooting script prescribed. I might remember something later, but off the top of my head, I don't think so.
All right. Anything about this episode that makes you think, oh, that's Gene Roddenberry? I know you mentioned the love and the peace, but you think it was just the sex? You're just like, yeah, it's Gene. You don't know Gene personally, but a lot of stories surrounding Roddenberry.
Giving Roddenberry's libido one last hurrah. You know, like I said, he was in rather poor mental and physical health at this point.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know because I know that there's still stories around the time of him like saying some stuff, not on camera, but like just some phone calls and stuff like that. I didn't know he was in poor health around the time of this.
Yeah, and even that doesn't excuse, you know, like chauvinistic behavior and things like that. But he was
but I just didn't know.
You know, he was still a presence though. You know, and you can definitely see it in episodes like this.
Yeah. But again, this one wasn't bad presence, because throughout these episodes there's been some that I'm like, he needs to get away. We need to get him away from this. But this was not one of them. So that's good to know. So, either way, John, anything else you want to say before we wrap this one up?
No, I think that just about covers it.
All right, so thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Those Guys on the Radio, please remember to like and subscribe. If you're not, there's a good chance that you've either found us on iTunes by searching up Those Guys on iTunes, and you're listening to us on the go on your treks. Thank you. Or you could be listening to this through our Blog Talk Radio account, blogtalkradio.com/ThoseGuysOnTheRadio. No matter how you're listening to this, thank you so much for being a part of this, helping us do our thing. If you're giving to our Patreon, patreon.com/TGProductions, another thank you as well. And either way, love you all so much. Take care and tune in next time, next week, potentially next week, should be next week, for another episode of Star Trek Thursday. Now, if it's not next week, you'll know by going on our social media accounts, facebook.com/ThoseGuysOnTheRadio, our Twitter @ThoseGuysRadio, or our website, tgproduction.net, and that's how you'll find out. All right, guys, so see ya. You could say goodbye, John.
Goodbye, John.